Hello friends, welcome to the Point. In today's session, we'll be discussing about infrastructure. What is infrastructure? Infrastructure, it provides a supporting services in the main areas of industrial and agricultural production, domestic and foreign trade and commerce. And these services, it includes roads, railways, airports, energy utilizes, education, healthcare, and so on. Some of these facilities, they have a direct impact on production of goods and services, and some others, they give indirect support by building the social sector of the economy. So some divide infrastructure into two categories, economic and social. So infrastructure that is associated with energy, transportation, and communication, they are included in the economic infrastructure, and whereas those that are related to education, health and housing, they are included in social infrastructure. Relevance of infrastructure. Infrastructure, it is a support system on which depends the efficient working of a modern industrial economy. Modern agriculture, it is also largely depends on it for speedy and large-scale transport of seeds, pesticides, fertilizers and the produce using modern roadways, railways and shipping facilities. Infrastructure contributes to economic development of a country both by increasing the productivity of the factors of production and improving the quality of life of its people. Inadequate infrastructure, it can have multiple adverse effects on health, and improvements in water supply and sanitation have a large impact by reducing morbidity, which means proneness to fall ill from major waterborne diseases, and it reduces the severity of disease when it occurs. The state of infrastructure in India. Traditionally, the government has been solely responsible for developing the country's infrastructure, but it was found that the government's investment in infrastructure was inadequate. And today, the private sector by itself and also in joint partnership with the public sector, it has started playing a very important role in infrastructure development. The census 2001, it shows that in rural India, only 56% households, they have an electricity connection, and 43% they still use kerosene. A majority of our people live in rural areas, and despite of so much technical progress in the world, rural women, they still use biofuels such as crop residues, dung and fuel wood to meet their energy requirements. So some economists, they have projected that India will become the third biggest economy in the world a few decades from now. And for that to happen, India will have to boost its infrastructure investment. In any country, as the income rises, the composition of infrastructure requirement changes significantly. And for low-income countries, basic infrastructure services like irrigation, transport and power are more important. And therefore, the development of infrastructure and economic development go hand in hand. And agriculture, it depends to a considerable extent on the adequate expansion and development of irrigation facilities. Industrial progress, it depends on the development of power and electricity generation, transport and communications. And if proper attention is paid to the development of infrastructure, it is likely to act as a severe constraint on economic development. Energy. So energy, it is a critical aspect of development process of nation. And it is of course essential for industries also. And now Energy is used on a large scale in agriculture and related areas like production and transportation of fertilizers, pesticides and farm equipments. And it is required in houses for cooking, households, lighting and heating. Sources of energy. There are commercial and non-commercial sources of energy. Commercial sources are coal, petroleum and electricity, as they are bought and sold. And non-commercial sources of energy are firewood, agricultural waste and dried dung. These are non-commercial as they are found in nature itself. Commercial sources of energy are generally exhaustible, and non-commercial sources are generally renewable in nature. And more than 60% of Indian households they depend on traditional sources of energy for meeting their regular cooking and heating needs. Non-conventional sources of energy. So both commercial and non-commercial sources of energy are known as conventional sources of energy. So there are three other sources of energy which are commonly termed as non-conventional sources: solar energy, wind energy and tidal power. So being a tropical country, India has almost unlimited potential for producing all these three types of energy. Power or electricity, the most visible form of energy, which is often identified with progress in modern civilization, is power. Commonly it is called as electricity. The growth rate of demand for power is generally higher than the GDP growth rate. In India, in 2016, thermal sources accounted for about 67% of the power generation capacity. Hydel power, it accounted for about 14%, while nuclear power, it accounted for only 2%. Atomic energy, it is an important source of electric power and it has economic advantages. At present, nuclear energy accounts for only 2% of the total energy consumption against a global average of 13%. And hence some scholars suggest to generate more electricity through atomic sources. Some challenges in the power sector. Electricity generated by various power stations is not consumed entirely by ultimate consumers, and a part it is consumed by power stations itself. While transmitting power, a portion of the power is lost in transmission itself. And some of the challenges that India power sector faces today are: India's installed capacity to generate electricity, it is not sufficient to feed an annual economic growth of 7 to 8%. In order to meet the growing demand for electricity, India's commercial energy supply needs to grow about 7%. And at present, India is able to add only 20,000 megawatt per year. State electricity boards which distribute electricity incur losses and which exceed 500 billions. And this is due to the transmission and distribution losses and wrong pricing of electricity and other inefficiencies. Private sector power generators are yet to play their role in a major way. Same is the case with foreign investors, and there is general public unrest due to high power tariffs and prolonged power cuts in different parts of the country. And thermal power plants, which are the mainstay of India's power sector, they are facing shortage of raw materials and coal supplies. So therefore, continued economic development and population growth, they are driving the demand for energy faster than what India is producing currently. More public investment, better research and development efforts, exploration, technological innovation, and use of renewable energy sources can ensure additional supply of electricity. Health. Health is not only absence of disease, but it is also the ability to realize one's potential. We can say health is a holistic process that is related to overall growth and development of the nation. So, development of health infrastructure, it ensures a country of healthy manpower for the production of goods and services. So, scholars argue that people are entitled to healthcare facilities, and it is the responsibility of the government to ensure the right to healthy living. Health infrastructure, it includes hospitals, doctors, nurses, and other paramedical professionals, beds, equipments required in the hospital, and a well-developed pharmaceutical industry. And it is also true that mere presence of health infrastructure is not sufficient to have healthy people. The same should be accessible to all the people. The initial stages of plant development, policy makers envisage that no individual should fail to secure medical care, curative and preventive, because of the inability to pay for it. State of health infrastructure. So the government, it has a constitutional obligation to guide and regulate all health related issues such as medical education, adulteration of food, drugs and poisons, and so on. The union government evolves broad policies and plans through the Central Council of Health and Family Welfare, and it collects information and it renders financial and technical assistance to state governments, union territories and other bodies for the implementation of important health programs in our country. Private sector health infrastructure. Private sector, it has grown by leaps and bounds, and more than 70% of the hospitals in India, they are run by private sector, and they control nearly 2/5 of the beds available in the hospitals, and nearly 60% of dispensaries are run by same private sector, and they provide healthcare for 80% of outpatients and 46% of inpatients. So in the recent times, private sector has been playing a dominant role in medical education and training, medical technology, diagnostic, manufacture and sale of pharmaceuticals, hospital construction, and the provision of medical services. Indian system of medicine. So it includes 6 systems: Ayurveda, Yoga, Unani, Siddha, Naturopathy and Homeopathy, and all together it is called as Ayush. And at present there are 3,167 ISM hospitals, 26,000 dispensaries, and as many as 7 lakh registered practitioners in India. So, but a little has been done to set up a framework to standardize education or to promote research. These ISMs, they have a huge potential and they can solve a large part of our healthcare problems because they are effective, safe and inexpensive. So one of the study points out that India has about 17% of world's population, but it bears a frightening 20% of global burden of diseases. In short, it is called as GBD, which means global burden of diseases. GBD, it is an indicator used by the experts to gauge the number of people dying prematurely due to the particular disease, as well as the number of years spent by them in the state of disability owing to the disease. In India, more than half of GBD is accounted for a communicable diseases such as diarrhea, malaria and TB. So infrastructure, both economic and social, it is essential for the development of a country. And it directly influences all economic activities by increasing the productivity of the factors of production and improving the quality of life. So in the last 7 decades of independence, India has made considerable progress in building infrastructure. And many parts of rural India, they are yet to get good roads, telecommunication facilities, electricity, schools and hospitals. So as India moves towards modernization, the increase in demand for quality infrastructure, keeping in view their environmental impact, will have to be addressed. So while accessing the two infrastructure, energy and health, it is clear that there is a scope for equal access to infrastructure for all. See you all in the next session with some other interesting topic. Thank you.